us for the many years that this work, changing big systems, takes. So a bit about Groundwork, just to get us started tonight. We're based in Northwest Lower Michigan, but we work in various regions across the state. We've been around for almost 30 years now, and we work to build partnerships to strengthen community resilience in order for us to thrive. Convening like we're doing tonight is one example. 3 focused areas help us do this. We have a climate and environment team, we have a transportation and community design team, and you might have seen some of our work advocating for the passenger rail across the state. You might have seen some of our work in protecting our waters, and we also do a lot of work in food and farming, which I'll get to right now. We have 4 main areas in our food and farming program. Farmer support is one. Our original name was the Michigan Land Use Institute when we worked in land preservation, and at the heart of that is people stewarding the land. And so we couldn't do it without supporting farmers. Since, we have worked to create markets like schools, pantries, and other institutions for farmers to sustain their livelihood. Farms, Food, and Health, Farm to School, and Food Access are ways to support this. We also have an increased focus on health for kids, pantry clients, community members, and patients. In our food access work, we are expanding our efforts to help communities across the state get past barriers in infrastructure and education to get that local food to people. Some of our partners in the statewide expansion are in attendance tonight, and we're looking forward to working more with you on that program. It's called Building Resilient Communities, and you'll be seeing a lot more of that soon. In our Farm to School initiatives, we've provided nutrition and garden education to students through our staff and Food Corps service members, both in the Grand Traverse region and in the Charlevoix-Emmett County region just north of here. We assist in the 10 cents a meal program for Michigan kids and farms, and that reimburses schools who purchase Michigan-grown fruits, vegetables, and dry beans. And this is an example of that highly collaborative work where we work alongside MSU Center for Regional Food Systems, the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, and now, after having piloted that program over 10 years ago, the Michigan Department of Education now implements that. It's at $4.5 million in the school aid budget, so we're very excited to keep that going. All of these efforts are to strengthen our regional food system, which needs healthy individuals at its core. And our team makes this possible. I am excited to introduce Christina Barkle, who is not here tonight, but is in our food access space, based in Traverse City. We've got Amanda Brazel and Melanie Tran, who both focus on that 10 cents a meal program to keep that strong. Amanda's in Detroit, Melanie is in Grand Rapids, and we also have Corey Fitzpatrick in our Petoskey office as our Farm to Institution specialist, and I will talk about Paula in just a minute. If you haven't heard, Groundwork is going through a leadership transition. Hans Voss has been with us since 1995, and we wish him well in his future unknown adventures, starting in January. And Elizabeth Pelchak has joined us as of 2 weeks ago, and she came from the University of Vermont, and we are all slowly getting to know her. And she and Hans are actually in Grand Rapids right now, getting to know our staff that's based there. So we can't wait for you to meet her soon, too. And now I get to introduce Paula. Paula is our community nutrition specialist at Groundwork. She began her career practicing medical nutrition therapy in long-term care. And in her current role with Groundwork and the public health sector, she draws on over 30 years of experience and continues to grow her practice to include the interactions of wellness with the built environment, ecological systems, and the socio-ecological public health model. She's worked with Taste the Local Difference, which is a sister organization of ours, and she's been supporting the board of the Grand Traverse Food Shed Alliance. And she also has been supporting the use of teaching kitchens as an emerging healthcare lifeline for both rural and urban communities alike. Paula, I'm going to hand it to you.
Thank you, Jen. Well, welcome everybody. This is a big day for me. This is a celebration of 8 years of work, so I'm very pleased to be here. Just a little housekeeping. If you're not aware, the 2 bathrooms are right out here across the hall. I always want to know that when I'm in an event, so I'd like to share that right up front. We have a couple aims of our program today. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what our Farms Food and Health project has been doing for 10 years and highlight some of the exciting things that we anticipate with our teaching kitchen, which you will get to see right after our event. We want to introduce this topic of blue zones. So when I came to Traverse City, I just kept hearing about blue zones, and people were coming to me asking me about blue zones. And I'm not an expert, so I got an expert panel to come and talk to you all about that. We want to translate the pillars. There's 9 pillars that you see in your agenda. And we want to talk about what that means for us here in our region. And then we want to just get together, learn more about what you all think of this topic and want to do, and share resources and do some networking in the kitchen. We have beautiful tastings from our friends at the Great Lakes Culinary Institute and Planted Cuisine, and support from My Farm Co-op as well. So I will be talking about Farms Food and Health, and then we'll get right to the panel. So what is Farms Food and Health? Well, Farms Food and Health was started in 2014. The first conference happened at, I believe it was, it predates me, but we were at the Kirkbride Hall, and it was in a January. And we brought together health practitioners, employers, schools, people who work in hospitals, really just to break down silos and really get people talking about food, the farms that are growing the food, and our health. So our first conference was in October of 2014, and at that conference we had Dr. Pat Friedley as our keynote presenter, and we've been working with his son, Luke Friedley, on another project that I'll talk about in a little bit, and he has since moved on to Grand Rapids, so we kept the Friedleys very close in our beginning of this work. Whenever Dr. Friedley came, he gave us a quote that said, "It is too easy to rely on medications to fix a health issue, rather than emphasize the real, whole, organic foods which nourish our body to repair itself." And that was a grounding sentence for us. In 2016, in January, we had another event. At this event, our keynote presenter was a physician, and she had a book called Pharmacology, Farm, F-A-R-M, Ecology, Dr. Daphne Miller. And she told us, "You guys are blowing me away. This is the most diverse audience professionally that I have ever spoken to, and I've given this talk globally around the world." So that was like a big, exciting moment. And then I came to Michigan that March. And when I arrived from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I was working at a college at Carnegie Mellon, and I was directing health promotion programs and helping young people. And we relocated here to northern Michigan, and I kept researching who's working outside of a clinic on nutrition and health. And it either came up MLUI or Groundwork. So I cold called. "Hey, I see you have fellows. Do you take mid-career professionals?" And Megan McDermott at the time said yes. And that just gives me a reason to shout out both Megan McDermott and Diane Connors. Diane left us her legacy in this beautiful book, and we have that for sale. It's called Shared Abundance, and it really takes us through all of our program areas in food and farming, so please check that out. So when I first got here, I was a fellow, and for the first year, I worked pretty much writing the curriculum for the Culinary Medicine Conference that we hosted in 2017. And at Farms Food and Health in 2016, there was 1 hour of continuing medical education, and our healthcare, and Munson has been a partner with us this whole time, so they've been an early adopter of food as medicine concepts. GLCI is also a key partner in this work. So in 2016, we had 1 hour, and then in 2017, I wrote 18 hours of continuing medical education. And we invited Dr. David Eisenberg from Harvard to come and be our keynote presenter. And he gave us a beautiful quote on the back of our book. And he said, this just might be the place that will invent the future of a healthy, resilient community. So that's another really strong statement about what we're doing. And he had a slide that said, the medical community needs to talk to the food community. And he's like, you all are already doing it. So last week, I went to the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. Our Teaching Kitchen is part of a worldwide organization called the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. And there we maintain our very strong relationship. So we got this work that we did in 2017 published in the American Journal of Health Promotion, and that was a big deal. So a small little town in northern Michigan got some national recognition, and that is me and my partners at Munson, Kara and Dr. Fox, presenting at that conference for professionals who do professional education for other healthcare professionals. So 2019 was our largest Farms, Food, and Health conference. We had an expo. We had a track for school service and food providers. We had a track for culinary medicine and healthcare providers. And we had a track for everybody. So it was a really huge event. Again, partners with Munson and GLCI. And these are just pictures from all over all of the years. And many people are in this room and online. Hi, you've been instrumental. So our first culinary medicine conference in 2017 was supported by the Grand Traverse Food Shed and Rotary. And then we got support for our large conference in 2019 from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund. So very important on partnerships. So during COVID, we did a lot to make sure people had access to healthy food. And one of the things we did was turn our Munson Family Practice waiting room into a pop-up teaching kitchen. And we did a feasibility study called Dinner with Your Doctor. And these are the beautiful foods that we made. And our friends at Michigan State Extension were part of that program, and they're here today too. So thank you. And guess what? We wrote an abstract and got published again. So we got published again as part of the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative Research Conference, and I presented this poster in 2022. So Jen had mentioned, and I'm just going to reiterate, that we can't do any of this without partnerships, so I'm so glad to invite you all into this farms, food, and health space together. So what's going to happen now is our teaching kitchen is ready to roll, and you're going to get to experience a little bit of tastings in there, but we are really excited to be part of the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. This is people from Japan, from Germany, from Harvard, from Yale, and Traverse City, Michigan, all together figuring out how we're going to use and move healthcare away from just clinical and prescriptions and medical illness, sick care, to true healthcare. And we believe teaching kitchens are our future. We had one cohort of addiction treatment services in the kitchen, and they just told me all that they learned, a bunch of men, and they loved it, and they wanted more of it. So we're hoping we can actually do that. And then we did our first culinary medicine conference in the teaching kitchen last September. This is a dietitian to be and a doctor to be, side by side together, cooking. And I just think that's beautiful. So we're on the map, and I'm so pleased to be part of this work. It's been very meaningful, and good things are coming. So thank you so much. I'm just going to take a minute now to introduce our panel. Our moderator today is Kara McDonald from Traverse Magazine. Kara is a writer and executive editor of MyNorth.com and Traverse Northern Michigan Magazine. As a veteran editor of regional magazines, Sense of Place is her North Star. She happily navigates dinner time based on seasonal produce and hosts bi-weekly Eat Local segments on 9 and 10 News. We film some of the segments here in the Teaching Kitchen. Kara lives with her family in Traverse City, so welcome, Kara.
Thank you so much. This evening is so special to me as well, and what I hope for this evening is that we are able to use these seeds of conversations to really go from just ideas to more synthesized and energetic conversation that leads to change. This, for my involvement, happened with a conversation. And it started watching the documentary that dropped not too long ago about blue zones. And I started thinking, and I started talking to my staff, and I said, we have a lot of those criteria, but we're not a blue zone, and there's certain things about blue zones that we just don't have yet, which is an abundance of 100-year-olds. So we're working toward it, but we're not there yet. And we published a story about that in the May issue of our magazine. And it was fun to do, and it made sense to us, and we had a great deal of fun connecting those dots. And then I moved on from it until Paula, at the end of the summer, said, I read your story, and I was thinking about it, and do you want to talk about that more? And that led to more conversations. And Paula took this and ran with it, and to create something like this and see all of you here, I'm so gratified to be part of it. And my hope for this evening is that these conversations continue to grow. But you're in for a treat with more people that we've roped into conversation. There's just some fantastic brains in this room, as you've already seen. I've got to get my glasses on up here because the mood lighting is messing with me here. But it is my pleasure to introduce our panel. And my great fear of the evening, and my fear of the evening beyond not being able to read my notes, is that we will not have nearly enough time to cover all of the good stuff that these fine panelists have to share with us this evening. But I'd like to start off by introducing Dr. Tina Mitropoulos. She's an osteopathic physician practicing in the Traverse City area. Dr. Mitropoulos earned her undergraduate degree in nutritional science at MSU and completed residency in Grand Rapids. She is triple board certified in family medicine, osteopathic manipulation and neuromusculoskeletal medicine, and lifestyle medicine. She is also a registered yoga teacher and works with patients through evidence-based, whole person, and a compassionate approach. Please welcome Dr. Tina. Our next panelist is Dan Thorell. He's the health officer of the Health Department of Northwest Michigan, the Benzie-Leelanau District Health Department, and he's a registered sanitarian of the state of Michigan. He received his Bachelor and Master of Science degrees in Environmental Health from the University of Michigan, and throughout his career has worked in all aspects of environmental health. He currently serves on the Board of Directors and Executive Committee for the Michigan Association of Local Public Health. Please welcome Dan. Carolyn Olsted is the Transportation Program Manager here at Groundwork. She earned her degree in Geography and Planning with a minor in Environmental Science from Grand Valley State University. She began her career in regional transportation planning in West Michigan, moving to Traverse City in 2020 to join the Groundwork team, where here she advocates for alternative, human-centered transportation solutions that enhance the livability and enjoyment of our towns. Carolyn, come on over. Our next panelist, Joe Van Alstyne, oversees the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Ottawa Indians food distribution program. He also serves as the Midwest Region President and Vice President of the National Association of Food Distribution Programs on Indian Reservations, representing 276 Indian tribal organizations throughout Indian country. Joe is also the past national president of this organization. As a United States Navy veteran, Joe is also the Little Traverse Bay Band Eagle Staff Carrier, and most recently was the first Native American to be appointed by Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack to Michigan's FSA State Committee. Joe. And lastly, Madeline Wilcox is a board-certified specialist in oncology nutrition and a member of both the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the Oncology Nutrition DPG. She currently works for the American Oncology Network and offers evidence-based nutrition recommendations to help patients manage treatment, side effects, and support recovery, and enjoys helping patients feel their best and confident in their nutritional knowledge, no matter where they are in their health journey. She earned her Bachelor of Science and graduate degrees in dietetics from Central Michigan University. And Madeline has a particular, I would say, insight into the Blue Zones and came to our conversations with a really incredible passion, having just spent a significant amount of time in one of them. So we can't wait to hear her stories. So Madeline, come on up. So to get started, I think a lot of us are probably in the room for the same reason. The Blue Zones program has reached a lot of people. It's a project that's been underway for about 20 years. It's a well-known brand as well. And as a concept, it's just very compelling. It's clever, it's aspirational, and it's also something that provides a framework that I think we can all get our brain around, is to say like, okay, show us what this looks like. You know, help us understand if there were to be a roadmap to not just, I don't just want to live to be 100, but to actually thrive at any point in my life and to age well. So what we'd like to start off with is really getting a better understanding of what these Blue Zones are, what it's like to experience them, what is life like there. And I would love to throw this out to Madeline, if you want to share just some of your experiences with your visit to Greece.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Yeah, so Blue Zones, they're areas of the world, as most of you are probably familiar with, where there's people living long, healthy lives. And, you know, the asterisk is on the healthy. They live well into their 90s and, you know, even to their hundreds with low rates of normal, I say, diseases of affluence that we are experiencing here in the United States. And so about 20 years ago, National Geographic explorer Dan Buettner, which his name is probably very familiar to you guys if you've been following, he coined these Blue Zones. So the 5 of them would be Ikaria, Greece, which my husband and I actually were able to visit, so I'll be able to, you know, briefly kind of talk about that. Sardinia, Italy, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Okinawa, Japan, and then also Loma Linda, California. And as you've probably seen with the documentary that just came out last year, just about, I think the fall, maybe August, late August 2023, they had a great docuseries done on these areas and kind of broke it down into even more specific parts of the pillar and very, I guess, approachable, applicable things that we can be doing. There was already an interest in this community. I can speak to that personally. I actually was the oncology dietitian at the Cowell Cancer Center here in town for a bit and taught a survivorship class there. And that was one of my favorite parts of my job. All of my patients, when they were done and wanted to kind of work on what's next, I guess, after a big journey like that, we would do 10 weeks, and one of the weeks was talking about Blue Zones, and there was just a magic about it. You could see everyone's eyes light up, and just the fact that there is a framework here, these 9 pillars that we're going to talk about, that we can essentially all follow. It's pretty remarkable, and it should feel empowering, and that's, as clinicians, we want our patients to feel as empowered. And going to, God bless my husband, that's where we went for our honeymoon, was this rugged island for 2 weeks, and it was just, it made sense. And so the hope with this group and this team here is that we can take these pillars and kind of apply them to our community so that we all can start living gracefully and focus on, I think, Tina, we were talking about the shift of aging in general and celebrating it versus maybe not, as we do here in the States. So I think that's kind of where we'll...
What was, if you would share some details from your trip, Madeline, just a little bit, what was one of the most, I don't know, one of the most beautiful experiences you had on the island that really just impressed you and made you want, I mean, because when you spoke to us this summer, you were kind of on fire.
Oh
with
yeah.
the-
Still, sorry, it must be the newborn sleep right now. So I swear, no, it's just a different feeling. So the community that's there, the environment, things they're a lot simpler. And they make sense in the same sense. So the food, was very much, everyone had a garden. Everyone there was very much connected, and the walkability of the towns, the way that they prompted you to be active. You didn't even think that you were walking, and I swear my phone counted 27,000 steps one day. I had no idea what we did. We just went. So it kind of set us up to move. It set us up to be robust and to be active. I think one of the funniest things we saw, because as we get older here, we're thinking about making our homes, safer, right? We get the bars, we get the stairs, the one step goes away. We saw this woman, she probably was in her late 70s, early 80s, in the road at night, and a Vespa or a scooter came around, and she, the spryest 80-year-old I've ever seen, just hops back up on the curve to avoid getting hit. And it's like, you don't see that kind of stuff here. And it's like, okay, well, their environments are set up to keep them moving, to keep them active. How do we do that here for our loved ones? I have parents in their 60s. I'm thinking about that too. How do we encourage people and make staying active the natural choice? It comes a lot from our community and how we set up our towns. So that, along with the food, obviously the food we'll talk about in a bit, but just very much it makes sense. So.
It sounds aspirational, except for the traffic part.
Well, it's just one road, two lanes through the whole island.
I'm glad
so.
she made it to the other side.
Yes, yep.
Thank you, Madeline. That is just, it's just so great to have that first person experience, and to be able to say, like, yeah, I understand that. I see those aspects in our community in certain ways, traffic notwithstanding, although 8th Street, yes.
Yeah.
But what about some of the more specific pillars? Can we dive a little bit into, Dr. Tina, if you'd like to jump in with some holistic thoughts on the 9 pillars? Because are you, generally speaking, familiar with the 9 pillars of Blue Zone? I think it's great to just walk through those. I think this crowd is pretty savvy, but to just take a moment and really, again, walk through these with a sense of how we align. How do we as a community, as a region, potentially align with these pillars?
Yeah, thank you, Kara. And I wanted to comment on something you said, Madeline, about the sort of the paradigm shift. Something inspiring to me about Blue Zones is this idea that as we age, it's not necessarily all downhill, or we don't have to accept that we should just have poor function and poor health, but that our quality of life can continue to be really abundant and beautiful and well. And sometimes, especially in practice, there's this sense, and patients come to me, they want to fight aging or reverse it or see it as this really terrible thing. And I wonder, a question, well, where does that come from? And yes, there are certain things that change, and there are things that sometimes we grieve, and there are certainly things that we experience in a higher incidence with age. But in these Blue Zones, and when you read about them and learn about them, the common theme that jumped out to me was this almost reverence for that experience, if not, a support of those more birthdays being this blessing or this something to celebrate. And to your point too, doing it in a way that's really well. And when you look at longevity work, they're talking about health span, right? Not just the number of your years, but the quality of them. And so how do we do that and respect aging and support it? The other thing that jumps out too is this idea of prevention, right? In American medicine, and I'm speaking from a place of having known it for many years and working within that system, is very intervention-based. And so as much as we can look at these Blue Zones, it's a very preventative model that can be applied in any season of your life. So with that, when we talk about these Power 9, I mean, we always like to put a buzzword or a name on something. It makes it flashy. I think even when I first learned about Blue Zones, a patient had brought me the cookbook. I'm like, there's a cookbook? I kind of love cookbooks, so I was very excited about it. But it's become a whole whole brand, and but a very positive one. And so, yeah, I have both now. A lot of cookbooks, but it's a brand. But what I like about this is it's not a prescription, but maybe rather a paradigm or something to be inspired by and to apply in meaningful ways in your own individual lives and hopefully in our communities. If you want to go back, oh, go ahead, Kara.
Yeah, I was going to say, can we go back to the slide of the
Yes.
Power 9?
Thank you.
Is that what you're looking for?
I realize you don't have ultimate control up there, sorry.
I like to think I do.
I do too, yeah. The first tenet or principle, moving naturally, you already spoke to that, Madeline, this idea that movement is just built into our lives. Many of you probably have athletic pursuits or fitness regimens or things that you really enjoy. And this is, of course, isn't excluding that, but this is also just your non-exercise physical activity. This is your daily movement. This is the farmer that has to walk up in the mountains every day for so many miles to just do their daily work, or to walk a certain amount just to get to your friend's house or to the market. And I think in Traverse City, we probably see some, little microenvironments where we've cultivated that. But in our daily lives, how can we support just natural, everyday movement? And also things like gardening or housework or your hobbies that may be just physically moving you, keeping your mobility, your stability up, and keeping maybe you in a longer and endurance-based heart rate zone, which we know has, good benefits as well. So this isn't these folks in the blue zones going to the gym and doing like a HIIT workout, although that's really fun if that's your jam. But it's building an environment or working within an environment that's already there that predisposes them towards doing these activities of daily living that keep them active.
Yes, very much so. And it's as evidence, once visiting there, we would see the elderly gentleman every morning sitting out, feeding his chickens, or everyone has a garden there, whether it's this little, 4x4 or a larger, piece of land, but everyone is pretty much trying to do all the work themselves still. They're not farming this out or asking someone or hiring someone. They're still working and still doing things by hand, and without even realizing it, we're expending a lot of energy that way. And that's one of the things that's thought to keep these people so healthy, is they're just prompted to be moving, and also they're enjoying their movement. It helps with, I think, one of the other, or a few of the other pillars, which we'll talk about, but that alleviation of that chronic stress that we all experience, I think, in our modernized American world.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a lot more about kind of environmental design and impact of that, I think, as the panel goes on. And you're right, there are a lot of overlaps in these principles. The other idea that I think is important to talk about is purpose. I hope I don't mispronounce this.
Ikigai.
Ikigai. Yeah, that was my phonetics. Thanks. I read it when I read Dan Vintner's work, but I never had heard it pronounced. It's the principle in Okinawa that discusses the sense of, why you wake up in the morning, what's your purpose each day? And if you read his book and he talks about these elders he's interviewed, it's really varied. It could be just waking up for your grandchildren that you participate with every day. It could be for your friend group that you walk to where they're all 90 plus each afternoon. It could be, a job that you still do or participate in. But that sense of purpose and why I wake up is so incredibly important across all these blue zones. And we probably have seen that in our own lives reflected, or in the lives of our loved ones. And when somebody loses purpose or struggles to find it, that can really lead to some really ill health effects. And it is related to our ability to live longer, more robust lives.
Yeah, I wonder if, just you can think about it in your head, but if someone asked you, what is your purpose, could we answer that? Or, maybe that's something we can think about too.
That's a party killer question. You know what I asked my teenage son that last week, and he looked at me and he's like, to be happy? And I was like, oh. I'm failing in this assignment as a mother. But it is really like, it's heavy. The way we frame it, I think, in our society, it's like purpose. But it really can be like, my dog needs to be walked, period. He's an Australian Shepherd, multiple times a day. There's some purpose there. And that dog is purpose driving for me, you know? So maybe expanding our definition too, to really allow us to find lots of layers of purpose.
It's interesting, Carrie, you mentioned that. Also, there's a puppy adoption out here when you're done tonight.
Oh, perfect. Free
when-
puppies with every donation.
I think you mentioned something about simple or it making sense early, Madeline. In these communities, when Dan reflected on the folks he met, they were light about these topics. So maybe asking what's your purpose does sound very heavy. It's your reflection writing tonight, guys. But maybe it is that simple. Maybe it is something you know that just inspires joy, or isn't that that
Or
deep.
just needs you.
Just
like
needs you.
really, just you
Yeah.
uniquely needs you. So
And downshifting, I like that idea. I think it employs a lot under this umbrella of downshifting as a term, but really it's managing your stress. We are so stressed out, guys. I think half, if not more, of my workday is talking to people about their stress and how they manage it. It's managing my own stress. And we know that stress is harmful in many ways, and the effect of cortisol on our body and inflammation, and then sleep's impaired, and then our sleep is impaired, so then we have, higher risk of chronic disease, and it just sort of spirals. And this is something that we see across all those blue zones, expressed in a lot of different ways. I think as a yoga practitioner, I saw mindfulness really come up, whether it was a meditation or reflection to your ancestors or prayer or maybe taking a nap in the afternoon, but something that was just very one single focus and slowing down.
Yeah. The
someone said happy hour.
happy
You are my people.
Makes the list.
That's on the list. Yeah.
That we're gonna get to happy hour later.
Yeah.
I know.
One of the Acarians' phrases that they use, it's siga siga, and it means as it comes or slowly, slowly. And my husband's nodding because at home I'm like very much ready to go, go, go. And sometimes when I get a little too frazzled, siga siga, like he brought that home with him. So another applicable tip. And I hope what you're seeing, the purpose of this whole panel is that we can do these things at home. There's not one thing up there that we can't all do here in northern Michigan, and that's what we essentially wanted to do tonight. So we'll keep it going.
I think it's maybe a very direct thing you can do, but the 80% rule, we
Yep.
could probably all learn from that. Okay, so who's going to say the Okinawan saying?
Harahachi bu.
Harahachi.
Thank you. a little reflection before you eat, and it's basically stopping when you're 80% full, or perhaps stopping when you're no longer hungry, then letting your stomach catch up and signal, oh, I am satisfied. I think we often eat to fullness, which is not as well most of the time. And naturally, if you eat 80% less, you're ingesting less calories, and it may be easier to maintain a weight. It's also a little more mindful when you eat that way, right? You're just sitting with your food. You're paying attention to how you feel in your body when you eat. You're not sitting at the desk with the computer between patients, putting food in your mouth quickly till you feel a little uncomfortable now. But really just that mindful eating and stopping when you're 80% full is something we've seen across those blue zones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think part of that naturally helps them do this too, is they rarely eat alone. You'll see people just eating lunch together, and as Tina said, so many of us clinicians, we're very guilty, and as other working professionals, of just slamming your lunch in 5 minutes behind the computer screen. They don't do that in these areas. They, food and dining together is a celebration, and when you're celebrating 3 times a day, you're a lot happier, so.
I want someone to come and cook me Japanese food 3 times a day.
That too, Kara,
That'd
yeah.
be great. And
Yeah.
relatedly,
Little nap, yep.
those meals have something in common, and that's our 5th pillar. Plant forward. There's been a little criticism of blue zones that it's a little too plant forward, but I think we like it.
Yeah.
I don't think we suffer from too many plants, most of us. So, what is your experience in seeing folks and their perception of just how much plant they need versus what they really get?
Well, it's challenging because everybody comes from a different space and what they're already eating. Let's not call it a diet, right? Let's just blow up diet culture to begin with and talk about a way of eating. And a lot of times we start with just this idea of including more of these plant foods, right, which feeds our gut health and gives us fiber, and we have all these phytonutrients that are cancer preventing and chronic disease preventing. And the common theme of the beans and veggies and grains and nuts that we see reflected in these blue zones is something we can bring forth in our diet. And ultimately, we know most of our society does not get enough plant foods or just vegetables and fruit in general, and certainly deficient in fiber. And if we could even just bring forth maybe what we can include more of, and you can have the debate about what you're excluding, whether it's meat or not, we already are doing ourselves a service for the better. They do have a theme of minimizing meat and dairy and sugar and refined sugar. If you look at it, really, it's a whole food diet, though, right? Like, this is really not a processed food diet. So there's a lot of ways you could look at that plant slant and pull those themes as they apply to your own way of eating and something that's sustainable and meets your needs. I see this as not prescriptive at all, but something to take away that inclusion.
Yeah.
I see us winning here, like in northern Michigan, right? Like, don't you just live for it's strawberry season? Oh, okay, now it's cherry season, And I'm still in my Honeycrisp apple season right now. It's still working for me.
Well,
But adding and looking forward to, as opposed to thinking, how do I reorganize and what do I remove, or create a more rigid structure.
And what's interesting is really this wasn't talked about, or we don't need to linger on it here, but these are foods that they have access to and that they're growing. So what do we have in abundance seasonally here, and what can we have access to? And someone may correct me on this if I'm wrong, but isn't Michigan like the second most abundant agricultural state, or there's some
Diverse.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And
Way
there's
to steal
certainly
my
food
thunder.
deserts and places where you don't have access. There's limitations on how to apply these blue zones to certain communities, absolutely. But we are so well seated to have so many wonderful, beautiful things throughout the year here, and let's not forget that.
That's a beautiful segue into number 6, which is for the people in the back. Wine at 5. Discuss. First of all, we have our own supply, so that's good. Yeah. But also, thanks for that as part of our daily routine. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, so speaking firsthand, this is accurate, at least in Ikaria. I can't speak to the other 4. And actually, Loma Linda is the only one that doesn't. That was one of the exclusions, so they do not consume alcohol. But other 4 original blue zones do. But again, they're usually eating and drinking together. No one's getting crazy. This isn't, binge drinking. This is enjoying something that usually someone's uncle just fermented in their closet too. It's very close to home. The amount of wine we were given in these PET plastic bottles to take back to our Airbnb, that was awesome. But it's a celebration. They're small servings, and likely the thought of this, because there is such a there's a well-established connection between, cancer and alcohol. As an oncology dietitian, I believe 6 different cancers, breast, and then most GI cancers, there's an association. So we do have to be smart about that if we have a history or medical history. But the thought, the fact that these places are living longer lives with less cancer, but they're drinking daily, there's something there. And whether it's the antioxidant capacity in the wine that they're brewing, that's been suggested. But, I think a lot of it is the antioxidant content of the foods. They're eating these things, and likely it's helping with the combating the oxidative, stress from the alcohol. So it's, again, everything kind of overlaps. You can't just kind of pick and choose one. I think it's just this perfect.
So that means the wine part is required
Yeah,
for
I
the,
guess.
of the 9 pillars. You must.
Maybe don't start if you don't
Yeah, if
already
you
have
don't,
it.
yeah.
I mean, we can talk more about this later.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
That's
strong
right.
feelings in the group about this. We almost skipped this part of the conversation. And I said, oh, I kind of want to talk about it. Actually, Joe, you shared a story with me in the green room a little bit about not just the idea of the antioxidant value of the wine, but you shared a beautiful word with me. Would you speak to that?
Yes, that word would be minnow-bamazoin, and in Anishinaabe Mowen it means the good life. Minnow is good and bamazoin is life, and it's a concept where we think it's really kind of hard to put it into words, but it's an action, it's a feeling, it's something that you feel when you're accomplished or when you're having a good time with your family. And sitting there like that, so so that's what we always strive for, is minimum bamazoin in our life, and the good life, and after a good job is done. So, and I think it kind of pulls all of these pillars into it as well, because when we're out harvesting or, foraging, you're walking through the woods, you're looking through things, you're creating movement, and then you've harvested, your leeks, or you've harvested your, mushrooms, or, whatever it is, at the end of the day, you sit there and you think about it, you're like, oh, this is good, right? I've got the opportunity to, feed my family again for tomorrow and for the following year. So each one of these pillars are very instrumental to, our ways of knowing and being as well. So, is that good? That's good. And I want to say thank you for stealing my thunder on the second largest agricultural producers, but
I was just so excited
Out the
about it.
window. Completely.
And have you heard about our blueberries and our production there?
I know. And apples too. We're up there. I think we're number 2. Are we number 2? Anyway, all of our bragging rights. So number 7, we got to start to pick up the pace here because we have so much to cover. But belonging.
These last 3, Kara, I think can kind of
Loop
be.
them together.
I don't want to lump them together in a way that dilutes each of them.
They naturally.
They naturally do. There's a sense of
connection.
connection and community. And, there's even research on loneliness. And Dr. Vivek Murthy, prior Surgeon General, he wrote this beautiful book about connection. And his actual research was in the study of loneliness and it actually being a risk factor for mortality. And so our longevity really depends, and our sense of well-being really depends on connection and community. So 7 is belonging. And a lot of these communities have a faith organization, irrespective of the denomination or the religious entity, but they have a community that they meet with regularity in a way that is really positive. And so meeting with like minds in some way, consistently having community is of the utmost importance. The loved ones first ties into that. So you could have a chosen family or biologic family, but people that you really put first as a priority and have a connection and a duty to in a way. That's something we've seen throughout those blue zones. And sort of this right vibe or this group that we want to surround ourselves with is really relating to supporting your healthy habits by those around you. And if ultimately you surround yourself with people who have this mindset, this growth mindset, this positive mindset, this mindset that gets you out moving and eating well and staying active, then the more likely you'll live that way. And so finding those folks that really help inspire and keep you plugging along is just really important. But I think all those are under that community.
It's your pickleball posse. I mean, basically, right? I mean, the people that get you out and get you motivated to do.
Can I just jump in and just share
Absolutely.
something? Just what you said really kind of struck me about loneliness, because it is something in northern Michigan. I mean, here in Traverse City, maybe not so much, where we're living close together and there's lots of opportunities, but in rural northern Michigan, it's an issue. And actually, at Benzaluna District Health Department, we just received a grant from the National Institute of Health to help with that. It's called the Pain and Loneliness Grant. There's another acronym too, but I'm not going to try to remember that. But anyways, physicians' offices are identifying people that have chronic pain and are identified as being lonely. And we have community health workers that are going out and working with those folks, going to their home, and kind of trying to instill some of those values that you just talked about, some of those strategies. So, I mean, I think it's, there are things being done about that, but it is a real issue in some areas of northern Michigan.
And I believe in one of the blue zones in Costa Rica, that's how their health department or their health institution works. They have someone that goes to their home every year and checks in on them to make sure that they're dressing themselves, they're eating, they're able to do things. And when you know that someone is coming, I think, to check on you, like, it perks you up. You're not just thinking you're by yourself out here in Cedar, Michigan, and you're, lonely and you're not going to have any social connection. But, if we've got these programs that we're starting to put into play more, I mean, we're on our way. So it's beautiful.
I want to jump from that based on your comment, Dan, too, and to bring Carolyn into the conversation. You mentioned, in town, we have a lot more opportunity. I live in a neighborhood where there are dog walkers, as I am one, and we have a little bit of a community, a thing. Even I know the dogs more than the people, but in more rural areas, of which we have an abundance in northern Michigan, the physical structure of our communities and our lives really impacts how we move and interact, and if we see people in a day. Carolyn, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the pedestrian part of our life. Paula, can you jump ahead there? I totally went off the script.
Oh no, this is perfect.
Did that. But talk to us more how these physical environments tend to play into the pillars.
Yeah, so I think we can kind of think of it in two ways. You have the natural environment, and then you have the physical environment. So, the natural environment is, something like, a mountain or a hill. And so, we see in a lot of these blue zones that they tend to be very hilly places, which contributes to that, that walking, extra strenuous kind of walking that you might do that keeps you healthy. But, it's really that built environment, how we as humans, create our homes, our communities, how you build, and you can keep going. So yeah, it's rocky, and we kind of have some of that in northern Michigan where we have some, hilly areas with glacial till and, dunes and everything. But, historically, as humans, we have built our communities in very similar ways if you look back hundreds and hundreds of years. And this is not a blue zone. I have to that's a caveat, and it is kind of more flat. But you can go back to that. Yeah. So this is a community though that I spent a little bit of time in. This is Beaune, France. It's in the Burgundy region, but I thought this was perfectly representative of a lot of these communities that people are living older. It's that the built environment, how they build their homes, their streets, their pathways. They kind of have this thing in common where they're pretty small. So kind of like you mentioned, you went to this tiny town in Ikaria, right? So it's this, right? You were in Ikaria, yeah, it was Ikaria.
Yes.
And it's not that big, right? So it's easy to get around. It's easy just to walk places. And so this town that I was in, it's just about a mile across. That's not very far. You can definitely walk that. It takes about 10, 12 minutes maybe to walk it. And everything that you can, really need or want is within that circle. So we can kind of see that, the historical boundaries of this community was kind of like, you can kind of see the round shape of it. Many of these communities are kind of that round shape because, again, it's the way we as humans have, how we walk around. And, of course, it's expanded out as populations have grown. But the idea is that, the way we have built historically is so different than how we're building now. And I want to say, we kind of are at a bit of a disadvantage. A lot of our communities don't look like this. You might see a little bit more of this in Traverse City, right? It's a smaller, kind of, city boundaries are a little bit smaller, tighter, things are closer, compact. But yeah, when you do get into the rural areas, our communities, our world has pretty much been built around us having automobiles. So the way that we have been building for hundreds of years before the car looks very different than how it is now, because we're able to go so much further out, but that also means we're getting further away from places we want to go and people. So it does kind of lend to that loneliness aspect. And I really think too about how, so yeah, we kind of are at a disadvantage. Like, how are we going to shift and create spaces that are more representative of, I think, what was naturally kind of our tendency? You think of it, every animal kind of builds their den or their nest a similar way. And I think, if we want to get back to that, how do we do that? It's going to take a lot of work, concerted effort on creating places that are walkable, bikeable, places that are more connected by public transportation. Public transportation's great because usually you do walk a little bit. You might walk to the bus stop and then walk to the place after you get to your bus stop there at the beginning and end. But one of the things that I definitely wanted to mention was this piece on kind of, again, the loneliness aspect. I think what we really have the power to do is, when we are creating our spaces, the built environment, we can really be more conscious about how we're doing that and how it fosters connections with people. So I've heard this term that friendships are grown out of proximity and frequency. So if you think back, you probably, if you think about your school days, maybe even, if you went to a university, but definitely think about, when you were a kid back in school, you probably had a pretty good friend group. And a lot of that is that proximity and frequency. You'd see those same people day after day. You'd have this, saw them every day at lunch, even if you didn't have class together. That frequency and proximity really grows friendships. And I think we see that that's harder to do in adulthood. Some of us, it's like, oh, I haven't made a new friend in years. And it's part of this piece of, like, you just don't see the same people over and over again. You're not doing that frequent connection. One project that came to mind that I was thinking about here in Northern Michigan, which is a project that Homestretch is working on. Homestretch is working on a building, a housing unit building that would be on the corner of Cass and State, downtown Traverse City. I think their estimated opening date is in 2027, so stay tuned for that. But it's a relatively small piece of land. It's right behind the omelet shop. It's on the Lot O parking lot. When I saw their designs for that building, I was so excited because it's a relatively small parcel of land. So they knew that in order to make enough housing for people, the apartments would have to be quite small. So you can almost kind of think of it as sort of like micro apartment, micro units. They have just kind of what you need, your necessities. But then you have on the same floor, you have a larger shared kitchen, kind of shared living space, really large balcony area that people can enjoy. And I loved it because it was intentional, and it was this idea that it gets people out of their apartments and puts you into a common space. And I think about how wonderful that is, because it's actually, you could create friendships that way. You're seeing people more frequently. And one of those big predictors of health is if you have connections, even just casual connections with people, just to say hi to the postman, or just someone, just those.
There's a term for that, isn't it? There's a term for the barista exchange.
Yeah.
But that is like the undoer of the loneliness, right?
Sure.
Like
it doesn't have to
very
be
small.
a deep connection. Just the fact that you saw someone and said hello and just had a moment can be a big predictor of health. So I think if we're really conscious about how we're building our apartments and having those community spaces, or even saying to someone, it's like, making sure that when you're putting the staircase in a building and designing that, making it so it's not just some creepy, dark staircase. Make it a really beautiful staircase, someplace that people want to be. And just like in this building here, there's the monumental staircase. People sit on the staircase. That's something really special about this building, too, is that when you are in this building, you get to see people and interact. So I think if you're really conscious about design, you can make it so that you're fostering more relationships.
I'm excited to see that communal kitchen because it means somebody's going to maybe cook me lasagna. You know, I love those Scandinavian kind of co-housing concepts and the idea of somebody taking a meal. And when it's your day, you really work. But then you sit back for the other, I don't know, 2 weeks and then just let somebody else make your dinner.
I love that concept as well.
I just want a whole piece of that. Speaking of food again, because I know we could go there. I know that a lot of us are here very motivated and inspired by food, especially this evening. And it's easy for many of us to see the connection to the pillars with what our region has to offer in terms of farm to table and seasonal, regional, delicious food opportunities and farmers markets and our farm to table type dining. And that's not always the most accessible. Sometimes it's not always the most affordable, and it is, of course, seasonal. Joe, I was wondering, could you speak to some of the challenges of accessibility for food? Do you think we are on the right path in terms of really making sure the bounty of this region reaches everyone? And what do you see as some possibilities for furthering us along that path?
All right, well, thank you for that question. So I just kind of want to step back real quick here to talk about the community aspect. And just recently, you know, we had somebody pass away in our community, and we do a 4-day fire for them. And it's out at our elders housing complex. And so, you know, in my day-to-day job, you know, we serve food to those elders out there once or twice a month, you know, for them to, you know, cook. So, but we were out at this fire, and I was sitting there talking to my mom, and I was just like, I could hear all these kids laughing and playing, and they have a playground, and they also have a community center with a kitchen in it as well. And I said, it's so nice to hear kids out here, you know, and I said, I bet that feels good. And she's like, yes, it feels good. Because all of us elders out here really enjoy listening to, you know, the children that are out here playing and running around. And so that just made me think about that community aspect and how important it is for our elders to still, you know, feel that. Even though it may not be their children out there, it takes a village to still raise them. So, but then that goes back to, you know, how do we, you know, take that food that we're growing today and make sure that it gets out to the community and inside the community. And I think we have like 300 farmer markets throughout the Michigan, not, you know, in Michigan, 300 farmers markets. And so, you know, being the second largest vegetable producer in the United States, I mean, we do have a very abundant farmers here, but they're also aging as well. And so, you know, that's part of my job with the FSA is, you know, make sure that we got some new beginning farmers and ranchers, you know, being able to utilize this land as well. So, but to go back to the food aspect is working with your neighbor, I say, right? Because, you know, I do shop for, you know, my family as well when I go into town to bring it out to them. You know, we have other people within our community who will go out and help those, you know, bring food back from the community. I talk about the farmers market because I think about, you know, Harbor Springs, and that's a very robust farmers market. The Charlevoix farmers market is very robust, and I think a lot of our people go out and they get to walk around and see and talk. But then they're also like, hey, can you pick me up some carrots? Can you pick me up some onions? Can you pick me up some potatoes? So it's always about helping your neighbor as well. And then you got that ability to, you know, chat with them and talk with them and just be part of their lives as well. So what else do you have in that question?
What else do I have in there?
Yeah.
What do you see as missing pieces for us as a community in order to help? I mean, you mentioned obviously bringing back and making that part of the, you know, the social structure of going to the market, seeing people there, bringing back for your neighbors. I've split a bushel of apples with a friend, you know, because I can't quite manage all those Honeycrisp. But where do you see as some further opportunities for getting some of that more to people's tables, making it more approachable? I mean, part of some of the programs Paula highlighted today, especially, you know, with initiatives in the schools, are really making a huge difference. But where do you see some more opportunities for us as a region to make sure that we are kind of living into that abundance that we have, and really that everybody's getting a piece of it.
We do a lot of work with food pantries, and a lot of our, the Groundwork during the pandemic had a very good program where they raised, Jen, where are you at on that number? Yes, during the pandemic, to buy food from local farmers to distribute to the local food pantries, and I thought that was an amazing event there to be able to get that out. So we do a lot of, work there as well, working with farmers to make sure that they have access to markets as well. But really, again, it's working with your local food pantry.
I think one thing too, Joe, we were talking about backstage, was one thing that's kind of missing from this relationship is sometimes the individual having their relationship with food. That tradition of, you call it the Three Sisters. Again, one of the blue zones in Costa Rica, that's like their pride and joy. Icaria, they have their own, staples that they cherish and that they love, not because of the micronutrient and macronutrient profile, but because they grew them and their mothers made them and their grandmothers made them, and there's this appreciation to food that I at least see in practice that's missing sometimes. We're really disconnected. So yes, there's like missing access, but then sometimes just all that's missing is that relationship that we need to kind of encourage and cheerlead people back to, wanting to go and buy the farmer's market bushel versus going to Aldi maybe or something. So I think that's also.
I just wanted to speak to that too, the relationship with food. It's interesting when people ask about health-related nutrition advice. There's often some sort of prescriptive aspect they want. It comes down to this idea of like, how can I do this to achieve this thing? And I have to sometimes backtrack into their relationship with their body and the way they nourish their body and their relationship with food and the preparation thereof. And oftentimes I think that's, starting at a younger age, and I have some young adults I've worked with who maybe get a vegetable in a week and they don't see the importance of it, nor are they interested, but then they might be, and then they're curious, and then, and it goes from there, but there's got to be some exposure, some hands-on experience, and if it's coming from a package or it's not, and if it's not celebrated as something that's worthy of experience, it can be sometimes challenging. In the public school system where my kids go to school, they had something for a while in their elementary school each week. One day a week they had I wish I could remember the cute term.
Was it Food Friends?
I don't know.
Food Friends?
It was some term they had for
Try
like,
it
here's
Tuesday.
a novel and video.
Try it
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Was it Try
We
It
could
Tuesday?
probably riff on it and come up with some good ideas for
we
them.
should be in
but-
charge of this show.
It was so cute because, like, I remember my kiddo coming home, one of them, and saying, I tried fill in the blank, like beets today, or I tried rutabaga, or I tried this funky radish. They said it was a radish, but I didn't believe them, but I tried it anyway.
Right.
And they had it prepared a few different ways in these like little, like, when they give you the amuse-bouche at like a fancy restaurant, they're like, try this thing. It looks so interesting. And these kids are like, wow. And then they talked about how they made it. Maybe some of them even had like a little ingredient or recipe thing. I thought that was so cool. So you could get kids from all these backgrounds just exposed to something. And I remember the first time I got a CSA, not in Michigan, sorry, we weren't there, but Pennsylvania does a good job too. And I'm like, what is this? And now I'm like making things with kohlrabi. But even as a self-described foodie, I had things in there I'd never used before. And then my kids suddenly like, I think that parsnips are the best things ever because they came in the CSA box. But the hands-on experience, and whether it's a family-oriented thing or community-oriented thing or educational institution or community center or food pantry or senior center, we've got to expose people to this experience of nourishing themselves in a community setting. The more we can include these tenets, the better.
I'd like us to go to a potluck model for everything.
Where people cook for you, right?
Well, preferably. But I was recently at a potluck brunch with some ladies, just a few of us, and it was so interesting because we all ended up bringing just the right thing. Everybody didn't bring, what do they call those, funeral potatoes? Do you know what I'm talking about? With the potato chips on top and the cream of chicken and all. Fortunately, we did not all do that, but it was beautiful and it was just what we were hungry for, each of us. And somebody made it was a apple caramel French toast. It was in a big warming dish, just casserole style. Somebody made an egg bake. I brought berries with, like, I wanted fruit salad, but I didn't want the bad stuff. You know what I'm talking about, like the not very good honeydew and the grapes. And so it was just berries. And then we ate and talked about all the things we loved and ate more than 80%. And then we took home the leftovers of each other's stuff. And we said this was better than Thanksgiving. This was so wonderful. And then we got recipes from each other. And it was just like, oh, God, yeah. You know, how can we have more of that? Because we're all just trying to get by, you know. But maybe making space for that, whether that's in our schools, whether that's in our communities, in our neighborhoods, or our churches, or even just our friend group. We're getting close to the Q&A part, but there's a couple important things I wanted to check in with. Dan, you had mentioned that there's some recent data from the state about some initiatives and how we're kind of doing with some indicators of well-being. Would you share that with us and how it relates to some of the pillars?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do that. So I don't know if you know this or not, but in our communities, hospital systems and health departments are required to do a community health needs assessment, and that's on a 3-year cycle. So we actually, in Northern Michigan, we do something kind of unique, is we partner on that. 31 counties, tip of the mitt, knuckles up, and it's a great partnership. We've been doing it for several years now, and we leverage resources together. We're just able to get more out of it. And this year we actually have a really great data platform. We just started a new cycle back in January, and so the data is going to be available coming up in the next few months, and it's going to be something that's accessible for anybody to get into. But anyways, just wanted to explain that a little bit. But what we got out of the last cycle from 21 to 23, it's called My Thrive, the Community Health Needs Assessment, is the 4 biggest things that we struggle with in Northern Michigan. It was pretty much across the board, was access to healthcare, access to mental health services, chronic disease, and housing. Some of those are probably not a big surprise. And we've made, great progress in some of these areas, particularly out of the access to mental health. We had the Behavioral Health Initiative, which we now will have a mental health crisis center that's going to be opening up in like a month. So right there at the Munson campus. And so that's a great success story. But what I really wanted to talk about as it ties to nutrition is chronic disease, because so much of that in the public health world is tied to diet, right? Chronic disease is just tied to diet. Some of it is genetic, but a lot of it is tied to diet and exercise and things like that. And just an example, talking about access, we live in a wonderful area where we do have a lot of access to fresh produce, fruits and vegetables and whatnot, CSAs. But we are very much still a have and have not area, okay? And in public health, we work a lot with those, the underserved and those that are uninsured or underinsured. And one of the things, we have a program called WIC. Some of you may be aware of that, Women, Infant, Children, and we work with mothers and children under the age of 6 that, to try to get them off on the right foot, in their early lives, and get the mothers to have, counsel them and educate them about nutrition. So we're starting off in this world with the best possible way, especially with nutrition and breastfeeding and things of that nature. But just a simple thing that happened recently is the federal government switched how you access WIC benefits. And prior to that, you were able to take these paper coupons to any farmer market, farm stand, and get local produce, local fruits and vegetables. Well, they switched to this electronic card that now you have to swipe. Well, guess what? These places, these farm stands, farmers markets don't have the ability to process that or accept that. There's only one in this region, and that's Grolo up on 4 Mile and Hammond that actually takes that. Now, that's different than the SNAP benefits that, like, traditionally food stamps, we used to call it, right? So nutrition assistance, that's different. You can still access those sites with that. But WIC it's not accessible. And that's really a time in people's lives where we really want to have that impact on them, right? And get them off in the right trajectory. So that is something that we are partnering with and trying to work that out, right? And hopefully we can get that worked out in the near future. But that was just, one example. But, I really think that, nutrition is so key, especially to our aging population. How many here know that we have a state demographer? You've ever heard of that? We actually do. I was at a lecture, and we have a person in the state that looks at all the statistics, right? And not a big surprise, Northern Michigan is aging. A lot of it is people moving into the area, not necessarily just the population that's here.
The silver wave.
The silver
That's
wave,
the term.
right. So we have a lot of people moving to the area, older folks. Our population is aging, birth rate is going down, workforce is going down. So as we, are moving forward in the next, 10, 15 years, we're gonna have a very much older population and a lot less people to take care of them, right? So it is crucial that, nutrition is tied in to help these people, basically live their best lives and not be subject to so much chronic disease and have these built environments, right? So where you're moving and maybe lessening the impact of aging and aging gracefully in that manner. That's all I had to say about that.
You talk about an umbrella area. It just covers it all. And as you were speaking, I was sort of mentally reviewing our place in Northern Michigan. We are not like a blue zone because we are not warm. We do not have a lot of sunshine. Just want to throw that out there. But it does make that whole, that everyday movement, that more functional outdoor walking, farming, yes, maybe shoveling snow, but also not too much and not too heavy. But I just want to acknowledge that too is something that I've often thought about as, gosh, it gets hard. If it's kind of a fantasy of us to believe that we're all out there skiing, daily. So we need the snow for that too. But just listening to all of these panelists, I think it's just so interesting to see the synthesis and the overlap of all of these different things and how they come together to create that thriving. And what we're very curious about now is to understand from you guys, in what ways do you see these pillars evident in our community, or are you personally either experiencing them or putting that forward, actively leaning into that blue zone lifestyle yourself? Is there something you've found or that you are doing or that you've done that seems to fit, that's seeming to work? I mean, I gave you my brunch. My brunch, I think we should do it maybe once a month. But we would love to hear from you any questions that you have for our panelists. Please, it was just the tip of the iceberg with these folks who are so, so brilliant. But also, if you have any of your own anecdotes to share, please do feel free to do that. Yes, in the red sweater back there.
Test. I wonder if any of you could speak to an idea that I used to do a lot when I was in college. We called it club dinner. And it addresses a lot of the issues, the loneliness, it addresses exposure to different foods. It can be very economical, where you maybe have 3 other people or couples, and you cook one night a week, and each of the other ones cook a night a week, and then you either pick up the food or go eat at their place. Did you see that in any of the blue zones? And anybody have any experience with that concept?
The Greeks actually have a word for that too. It's called a panegyri. And so it's not as small scale as that. That's a brilliant idea, but it's where everyone essentially brings a dish and, they celebrate once I think it's once a month, and they eat together, or they take it back to their home and they eat it, so they're not having to maybe cook every night, and they're still getting that physical touch point, with their loved ones. So yes and no, I saw something of that sort, but anyone?
I think it's reflected in a lot of the communities that Dan writes about, just the idea of the communal dinner and the experience of people contributing different things. I think I just created an aspiration for myself. Thank you. I'm going to make a supper club.
Yeah, and I was
Two
just
other
thinking,
great idea.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, with that future homestretch property that they're building, where they'll have that giant community kitchen, they should make that a thing. Who's ever managing kind of that building, they should kind of put that into action and say, hey, anyone who wants to participate, sign up for a day and make a meal or do a kind of potluck style, or everyone even cook together in the kitchen. I think that would be really neat to put some programming around having a space like that, like a shared kitchen.
Well, I think that highlights exactly the reason we all wanted to talk today is what can we all do here to start living these pillars more fully, and if we have a platform to start a supper club, why not? I mean, we can do it.
Is there anyone here from Sutton's Bay?
We have sign-ups outside.
You know what you do, right? Do you know about the community potluck? Oh, well, I believe that Sutton's Bay has kind of a legendary community potluck. Yes, I'm not sure if it's monthly, but yeah, check it out. They've got a strong potluck game, and it gets themed. Somebody back there?
I live in Leland, and thank you. I live in Leland, and once a week, the Methodist Church does a community dinner open to anyone who wants to attend. There is no type of fee. There is no type of that you need food. Anybody can attend, and they use the kitchen that's there, and it's wonderful because you have people of all ages that are coming. We know a woman she won't ever tell her real age, but we know she's over 100, and she will come to that because of the camaraderie, the well-balanced meals, and just that she's very happy with it. So that's once a week in Leland.
A micro blue zone.
Oh yeah, 5 loaves, 2 fishes is involved with it also.
That's fantastic. Yes. Oh, Jeff's, you gotta, sorry. Jeff's getting his steps in also.
Thank you all for doing this work. It's very, very important. I'm part of that silver wave, and one of my goals is to be one of the people who lives to be 100 in Traverse City. But that said, there is, as I think Dan mentioned, there is a large retirement community up here with a deep well of experience and a deep well of understanding of what it takes to be older and live well. So all of you represent a much younger cohort. I would hope that as you move forward, and if you include focus groups or steering committees or advisory groups, that you include some of us. I notice that a lot of the people here are from that demographic and are very, very interested in sharing all that knowledge and our personal experiences in living well up here. So I encourage you to include us in that planning moving forward.
Yes, and I wholeheartedly agree. In fact, that's why we wanted to dedicate this portion of the evening, because we were very hoping that the community would be able to share their experiences and what successes they are having or what opportunities they see. So please chime in.
Yeah, for sure. On a personal note, part of what makes living up here so wonderful is all of the friend groups that I have developed since moving here from Chicago. I wouldn't live anywhere else now. It's a small enough community that you can accomplish that, that you can reach out, and that that we share meals together, and we share resources together, and we share the good and the bad. Many of us have had experience at the hospital. We have things to tell you about that.
Yes.
Yeah. We have experiences about access to food pantries or to transportation, and we have things to share about that. So again, I encourage you to include all of us.
Yes, thank you.
I wanted to thank you for saying that, and I think there's such a benefit in intergenerational friendships and community. And I wanted to mention, I gave a talk at the Senior Center in the spring after that article came out, and it was this packed room, and these folks were hanging out. They had a lot to teach me. They were doing a Blue Zones inspired meal, and then I saw groups of them like get in each other's cars, and they were off to like something else, and it was the most it was just this lovely moment, and I had no idea that was happening, but I thought, how cool would it be if we did have groups of elders to dispense knowledge? And there was a story about about Okinawa, and this woman who was was 104, I think, at the time, but she would go at 4 or 5 o'clock every day and meet with her buddies, and they were seen as the resource in the community. They knew what was happening. They would be the people who you'd go to if someone was down or if someone was struggling or someone needed money. And why aren't we drawing from the wisdom of all of our different generations? And we know that there's benefit to that. So thank you. That was lovely.
I think what's an interesting opportunity for brainstorming conversation is where do we create the spaces where those generations intersect? Because we're so stratified. Like if you're parenting kids of a certain age, then that's where you're at, and you're at those activities, and you know, and then we come home and it's just, you know, meals and bed and work and start all over again. So where are those spaces that you're experiencing that would be opportunities for intergenerational friendships and sharing of wisdom?
And that is one of our pillars, is the loved ones first. It's keeping your family close, whether it be your biological or your chosen, because there's this benefit. And it's the elderly teaching, you know, us young folk, but then it's the kids that we're hearing out in the playground too. You know, there's benefits, you know, both ways. And as Kara said, you know, I think the big thing is, where are we going to start doing this more? You know, not only just in Traverse City, but in some of these other regions that Dan's mentioned too, so that we can all, you know, our whole state, you know, experience this and grow to be this.
And you know, talking a little bit about the, you know, intergenerational benefits, something that I would love to see here, and I feel like maybe I heard that there was an idea for this in the future, but I've heard about this in other communities, is that you combine a retirement community with a preschool. And so then, you know, you can have maybe an overlap during mealtime or something, or different activities together, and just that beautiful combination of having, you know, the young kids running around or, you know, sitting on your lap and having that experience. I just think that would be incredible. I didn't grow up with my grandparents around. We lived in different states. And I just think like how amazing that would be if I had that as a young child, because I really didn't have access to a grandparent, you know, aside from a couple times a year or like, I mean, maybe during a holiday. So I think the more that we can do that intergenerational planning and be really intentional about it, the better.
And when you talk about those rituals and things around food and around culture, like who are the keepers of that, and who are the keepers of the traditions and the recipes and how to do things? You know, I see that intergenerational relationship as a very important piece of that. Yes. Sorry, just a moment. Jeff? Oh, I'm sorry, you already got one queued up. Just a moment, please.
Hi. I love my CSA, but come October, it's gone, right? So advice for how to manage until late spring when I can start my CSAs again?
Well, so with you know, the CSAs, you know, one of the things that we always try to do is eat seasonally, right? You know, and understanding that, you know, we're not always going to have fresh food throughout the whole entire year, and so our bodies also understand that as well. So if you're, you know, eating dried foods that you have dried and prepared yourself, you know, some of us call it soup season, you know. So, but yeah, that would be the other thing, is like looking at the different foods that you have available to you during that time of year, you know. So, you know, I know here in northern Michigan, you know, not the past couple of years, but, you know, ice fishing is always, you know, something good, you know, people go out to do. But again, that provides exercise, but we need ice. So,
Jeff, what is the project of the local? I think we talked about this, of the frozen local produce, frozen fruit that's available at area. It's available at Nobo Market and Olson's.
that's farmers to farm to freezer.
Farm to freezer.
Yeah.
Farm to
Yes.
freezer. Also, I was debating buying the big bushel of San Marzanos in October, and I said, I don't want to do it right now. I'm going to come back. I just don't have like the time right now to process all those tomatoes. And the farmer looked at me and he said, "Make time." and I did, because I felt bad. Yeah, but that's in my freezer right now, to the exclusion of almost everything else, and I'm also sad about that. So,
I think that's a great example or a suggestion too. And when we look at the blue zones, they also had to eat seasonally. They didn't have access to necessarily like fresh things all year round. Preservation was huge. Picking your grains, drying them. Not that we need to do that ourselves all the time unless you want to. Getting the ripe tomato season, tomatoes, and putting those away and having them for when it's not plentiful and the harvest isn't there, and kind of again, using what you have when you have it. It's a big theme that you see in these areas is the resiliency and the adaption, when there is, a period of downtime with produce and, finding things here that we grow and putting them away for, a snowy day. We can still be living a blue zone lifestyle by doing that.
And another point I want to make about that is oftentimes we have to meet people where they're at, and having grown up underprivileged myself, sometimes access or even the time, the resource of time is not available to do these sorts of things. So it is okay to have frozen items. It is okay to have canned or dried items, and it's actually very cost effective. So we certainly never had berries in the winter because we wouldn't have bought the ones shipped in, nor would my parents have picked a bunch and frozen them. So we had what was available and inexpensive, especially as a WIC and state assistant child. So having had that experience, sometimes it's very aspirational to say we want to do all these beautiful things, and that's, I'm very privileged to get to live a different life than I grew up in. But the realistic thing is we need to meet people where they're at. Mm-hmm. And so if the goal might be here, we can't apply that to all people. We need to start with what is going to resonate in their lives today, and not have shame if we aren't able to do it in a certain way. Exactly. Sorry, I felt so like
That's one of our mantras in public health, meet people where they're at. So thank you for saying that.
My name's Rena, and I do take people to Ikaria.
Ooh,
yeah, for retreats. My grandparents are from there, so I grew up knowing that food and community was very important. The thing that bothers me, that I can't seem to get out of the habit, is we go home after working, and then we binge watch TV, and just that loneliness of that's what's normal. Right? And now it's like, well, I can't sleep, so maybe there's like gummies that can help. And, it's such a wheel that you get stuck on. And I would love to see, if food is what brings us together, what if we, if you guys, what if you guys, hosted like Greek night or Japanese night or just, potluck night where you're actually just coming together and doing something different than the usual, I'm going to binge, 10 shows. I mean, back when I was younger, my sister binged The Monkees for 24 hours, and I thought, that is the stupidest thing in the world. Who would ever do that? But now that's what we do. We watch hours and hours and binge, and I personally can't stand it. I try to live the Icarian lifestyle, but boy, is it hard here, right? I'm out in Lake Anne and put myself in a place where nobody's around me, right? So
that's your downshift. That's your downshift.
It's my downshift. Yeah.
And I really like what you just mentioned about you kind of put that mention on something different, getting out of your comfort zone. I feel like you kind of said that in a way of saying like we're so used to kind of just sitting at home doing the same thing over and over again. And I think when it comes to our mental health, trying something new, doing something different. That's again something that takes a little bit of effort, but maybe sit with yourself and think, what's something I've never done before? Try something new, and it could be something around food. In my world of transportation, thinking about transportation all the time, and thinking about this more natural movement that we do, maybe I can give everyone a little challenge and say like, go someplace new, go to a new park you've never been to. Just like go home and look, go on the website, find all the parks, find one you've never been to, walk through it. The hillier, the better. Or, another thing too is, we're actually quite blessed in this region to have public transportation. Not everywhere, even in northern Michigan, has access to a bus. And I think it's really exciting if you've never been on the bus. try it. If it seems a little scary and you don't know how to do it, Beta, they have an amazing staff that will help you. They will walk you through everything. You can be on the phone with them for as long as you need to. I've found that myself when I'm using public transportation or even just walking on the Boardman Loop, all of a sudden you're part of the community. So you're getting someplace, you're walking, but all of a sudden it kind of feels like you're part of the community. You might just strike up a conversation with someone. And that's, I think, those natural connections that can happen. But yeah, definitely try something new because we're always just sitting. It seems like we're sitting in our cars, then sitting at our desk, and then sitting on our couch. How can we get ourselves out of our comfort zone? Exactly.
Well, I mean, I just want to shout out to everybody in November in Traverse City that it's delicious to sit in front of Netflix right now. We go hard, right? When we really make the most of summers. Most of us do if we're here. If that melting into that Netflix vibe is something that appeals, because boy, does it appeal to me too. There are some really wonderful things. I got to make a shameless plug here, but 9 and 10 News is our parent company. 9and10news.com has a calendar of events that actually my North and the Traverse Magazine staff, we feed it, which means we've got a lot of good ideas. So there are some incredible community programs, events, and activities. Like, I'm continuously getting the press releases, and it blows my mind, especially this time of year, because I feel like people that come up for air after summer and after all of the busyness and hosting and doing stuff, there's so much going on indoors, if that's your speed, because that's okay, that's where I'm at too. But for example, the Tuesday night, the Traverse City Film Fest, the Tuesday night films, just to commit to that, I have a coworker who committed to that, and she's gotten very sucked in, and she loves the whole experience of going out and getting out into the theater. I mean, yes, of course, you could stream that movie, but there's a Q&A afterward. It's just very vibrant. On 9and10news.com, it is just a really, really robust list of events. And again, this time of year brings out we let our freak flag fly in Northern Michigan. There's some weird stuff, cool events, trivia nights that go off the rails at local establishments, karaoke. Yes, we will embrace you.
Come to Alluvium.
Come to the Alluvium, which is open all the time. I'm so embarrassed because I walked by 2 weeks ago and it was a Monday night, I think, and I was like, what's that noise? And Jeff said, well, that would be the Alluvium. There's jazz every Monday. Yeah, and beer, and good beer. Sure. So Jeff, this lady in the front row, there's 2 women who wanted to ask questions.
I was just saying the Native Americans revere their elders, and we don't. And I think it would be good to get some elders out and show people that we are still moving around. It's no big. And it's
I don't know if you met my mom yet, but
Oh, your mom is probably awesome.
this woman, she is on the move 24/7. She is out within the community. I mean, someone says she needs something, she's there, right? So it is something that we do take very seriously within our communities. I saw a post today, from one of our elders, because she has monthly get-togethers with all the other women in the community, and they do. She teaches them how to finger weave, or she teaches them how to make a black ash basket, and so. But then she gets, she wants the children to come out there as well, so they can learn. Right. And one of the things that I was taught, is that, as a young elder, is that I should have an older mentor and a younger mentor, right? Someone who can help me learn some of the things that are coming up from the bottom, because we never stop learning, right? And so one of the things that we're trying to do with even food access in my job is we have a whole new inventory and computer system where we have the ability for our participants to actually order the food from their phone, right? And so it's kind of set up like a Walmart or a Meijer where you can order it now, but I want them to be able to have it, but then, they're not like, well, I don't know how to use my phone. I'm like, well, let me come show you how to use your phone, right? And we're going to order some food.
That's true. I'm an artist, so.
Yeah.
So one of the things that National Geographic did was Dan Bettner wanted to know, could they create a blue zone in the United States or anywhere? And Loma Linda was one of those places that was unlike the other 4 blue zones in that it was urban. So there was a sort of a contest or an RFP that went out. And Albert Lea, Minnesota was chosen to be the blue zone to try to create that. Do any of you on the panel know about the statistics with Albert Lea? And could Traverse City really become a blue zone by following that model, by creating, we have a lot of outdoor activities in the summertime, but in the wintertime, if you want to go walk, it's treacherous. So there is a desert here on being able to find a place to walk, unless you want to walk at the mall in the evening. Gardens, for example, for people who live in very hilly terrain. Could we create gardens, community gardens, similar to what they have over at the Barns, but in more locations? So is there something that Groundwork is working on to formally make Traverse City a blue zone, where we look at those aspects and we formalize it and we get business leader buy-in to make those spaces available to people?
I love your passion, first of all, because I think that's the question we all we're asking each other when we talked about this, is what do we do with this information? And we have such an interest. Everyone we talk to, is like mesmerized by these concepts, and what can we do with it for our community to better our community? So, I think that's what this whole conversation kind of is kicking off, is what are we going to do with this information, this feedback that we're getting, and what can we do with it with our government, officials and programming and the connections we're making tonight, and hopefully with many future conversations that we have.
Yeah, and I'll just add that Groundwork doesn't feel like we want to help, right? So it's really about what you all want to do and how we can help facilitate that. But I will share that, I'm part of the My Thrive group with Dan and his colleagues, and every county is going to be developing a community health improvement plan. So we have a lot of opportunity as community, as citizens, as neighbors, to really get involved in this community health improvement plan. And Dan, when will that start?
I know in December, I believe, at least with our steering committee, there is priority setting dates. But I think a lot of the work that convene focus groups and whatnot, I think a lot of that has been done. But it's a good question. It's something that we can, tap into and look into as far as if there's going to be other opportunities. I think there is, once the priorities are set.
And we'll share that. We'll share that information so you all can be part of that.
How can we get involved?
You guys are like plants in the audience right now. This is perfect. This is exactly where we wanted this
Jeff, how do you get
conversation to go. I promise we did not plant them. But I think that is fantastic. It really is the next question. I would throw that to the panel. What would you recommend in terms of, obviously there's the community county level potential involvement or potential planning, but what else? What else is out there for us in terms of next steps, do you think?
I think if I answer from a clinician space, I think asking questions when you are with your provider, your physician, about how you can approach your longevity and your well-being, but then also having bigger conversations that are health-focused in a positive way with your community. I think there are clearly pockets of people already doing some of these things, and I would love to say, let's take the mantle of making Traverse City a blue zone in a formal initiative. And I watched the how long it takes to make change, and we might not get that top-down approach, but we can from within, I think, bloom all these little pockets of beautiful things happening. So I think increasing communication with your communities to see if you can expand that and start those conversations. This was meant to be a kind of a conversation starter to a great extent, and you can see the wealth of experience and interest showing up here. So I'd encourage you to have conversations in medical spaces and in your communities, and demand that this changes healthcare.
Okay.
And then
I
talk
do?
to these people.
They're coming for you, Dan.
They're coming. Hey, what about you guys? No, just kidding.
You're definitely going to want to talk to Dan.
Paula.
Thank you.
You're kind of one step ahead of us. I think as a communications person, what comes to mind here is like, well, what do we need next steps? Is it forum? Is it some kind of umbrella? Is there some kind of central space for us to communicate, a board, where we start to aggregate groups, outings, ideas, meals, events? I don't know. I mean, but I think that exactly where we wanted to bring us in this point of the conversation is, what do we think? What are you guys interested in doing or seeing? It sounds, what I'm hearing is like you're looking for, where's the unifying, where can we step in and assist, and to what end? And we talked about this a little bit as a group, is like to the end of becoming an actual blue zone may be out of our control because of some of the criteria and the institution of blue zones and what they are. But if we were to adopt that objective, under what organization? Somebody in the back's got an answer. Yeah, I feel like you know. Yes, Jeff, do we have a...
Okay, we have actually time for just a couple more questions.
Yeah.
I told this gentleman he's up next. Flag to
The
somebody
Happy Hour
down
Club
there.
has the answer
Yeah.
too. I
Okay.
can feel it coming
But
from
first,
us,
I want
so.
to say, I want to shout out
can work
to
on your
the
PowerPoint.
sound team here and the lights. They have done a phenomenal job. And thank you, Tiff and Will. I've been part of things where tech has gone wrong, and you get PTSD from that. So I super appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Roy, a follow-up to her question, because it was on my mind. How do you add some structure, some formality? So I guess is there like an umbrella blue zone organization that you can tap into and say, hey, if we're going to embark upon this journey, do you have a checklist, a scorecard, something that we can at least start to look at and then maybe build some formality around that?
I believe Blue Zones was bought by the Adventist Health Group out in California, and that's the credentialing organization now that actually gives out you are a blue zone or you've met the criteria.
And has there been, or is this too preliminary to have had any? I wonder if that would be a logical next step, just reaching out to them and just sharing, hey, we're really early on in this journey, and can you give us some guidance on how we can embark upon it?
It's a good suggestion. Also, too, in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, of which I'm recently certified, they are now aligned with Blue Zones as an entity, and you can become a Blue Zone certified practitioner as well, or physician. So we're coming for you guys, okay? So I think we'll see more of those partnerships that will help create structure and maybe a rubric to be able to infuse our communities with these principles.
And I do very much understand, what do we do? Like, how do we get this title? One of the most beautiful things I think we need to remember about these blue zones is they never asked for the title. They lived in a way where they were noticed for being naturally vivacious and living these beautiful long lives. And if we get to become one, that's wonderful. I'll be so proud to live here. But the whole purpose of here is to say, hey, we can do this and we don't even need the name. We can live this way and we can have our supper club and we can, do something different after work, and we're going to set this up this next year and connect people. So I think that's another thing we have to remember, although I'm very much the same way as you guys. I want things done, so let's do it both.
Okay, this hopefully will go right into our kitchen thing, but I think something would be important is teaching people how to can or how to do freezing things so you can eat healthy all through the seasons. I think that's something that people don't know how to do. They, you have a lot of stuff, especially things that are given to people. They can't eat all of it. What do they do with it? You can do things with it.
Safely keep
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
One more really quick.
Okay. Where is it?
The back row is getting rowdy, is what I'm saying.
I just wanted to say that I have started a Blue Zone community last year. This Saturday, we're actually celebrating our 1-year anniversary. And we've been incorporating all the Blue Zone's principles in our group. So we have our own garden. Pretty much all the members have their. We do a lot of hikings and get connected with local farmers. Do a potluck every month where we get together and share mostly a plant-based meal, a glass of wine, and where we get to know each other.
And we've done touring of like the lab.
Light of Day
Light of
Organics
Day.
and workshop there, a potluck where we got the farm all to ourselves. We do happy hour. Actually, we started doing that at different wineries. And then at the pavilion, we were able to rent the pavilion at the Botanic Garden. So, if anybody's interested.
Just
How can we find you?
The biggest thing is that
How can we go to your house for dinner?
Central person. You got Diana. This is Diana, and she is the central person to our group, and she facilitates organizing a date and time. Here's an activity. It's you guys if you want to come. Here's an option. We're all getting together. So it's not like so totally formal. Susan
The front
is
row
like-
has found the back row.
Yes.
She's one of us.
So it's the biggest reason for all of us that are a part of this. It's still a small group, maybe 20, 30 people total, and not everybody comes to everything, but it's having that opportunity to be with other people because a lot of us are single or older or don't have a lot of friendship connections. Myself, I retired and I got out of a relationship and I was looking for people. I needed people to be around, and this is an opportunity that I had to be with people and to have different activities and engage in things. And I think you like doing it because it gets you outside of your family.
So is there a way we can connect to you, Dana?
Yes. And I just wanted to share something really important, like what motivated me to start this group. I come from a country in Europe where everything is like Blue Zone focused, and I moved here in 2004, and just in a year or two I developed a chronic condition out of the blue sky. And so 1 year after starting this group, I was able to heal 80%. So the power of community is just incredible. And I want everybody to experience that because I know right now, like pretty much everybody around me has a chronic condition. Yeah.
This is fantastic. Thank you. This has been wonderful conversation. I think it exceeded my expectations. I expected it to be great, but it's been really, really wonderful to hear your ideas and your passion. Thank you to our panelists whose expertise and of course their passion too has just really brought this next level, and to Paula for her leadership on this. What an amazing dynamo behind the scenes Paula has been making this happen. She knew, like, if we did it, you guys would come. I wasn't sure. And it's just been fantastic to be part of it. So Paula, you're going to take us into the last part of our evening.
Well, thank you, Kara. A round of applause for Kara. She did an amazing job. So we're just going to move into our next section. We have some resource tables, and our teaching kitchen is open for taste tests of plant-forward deliciousness that GLCI and Planted Cuisine and my farm co-op are supporting. You're going to get an evaluation sent to you, but if we can move the slide forward, you can get the QR code. You'll have an opportunity to sign up to be included in this conversation going forward. I'm so pleased to hear so many of the things that you talked about tonight, because we have a steering committee for our teaching kitchen, and we really want to gather a lot of this knowledge and the grandparent recipes and the community sharing in the kitchen space. So we'll have opportunities in the future to do that. We'll be doing a series of Blue Zone cooking classes in 2025. So we'll have a wine-based one. They'll all be plant forward. And I'm keenly aware of food and mood and how to eat till you're comfortably satisfied versus stuffed. So we'll have those conversations as well. So I just am so thrilled to have you all here, and let's just keep talking, and we can figure this out, but we don't have any set plan right now, but I think we'll get there. So thank you so much for coming, and please enjoy the resource tables and the tasty bites, and the cash bar is also open for our local Michigan wines. Thank you again, panelists. This has been fantastic.